One day, I remember I was getting to know someone better, something that I love doing, and so I decided to reveal that I watched anime. But that person didn't think highly of Japanese animation, completely sure that it only amounted to stories that weren't real, something that we as human beings can never connect with, because they are mere drawings on a canvas, and normally set in fantasy settings. How could we ever relate to something like that? And then I replied, well, the reason I watch anime is because of how real it can be. That person was aghast, completely at a loss of words, not knowing how to respond, not knowing what to think. I then explained in more detail. I mentioned that the use of fiction can many times be more personal to the viewer watching it, because the authors can use their own personal experiences and incorporate them in a fictional world to express something that is meaningful to them. And therefore, it will certainly be meaningful to those who watch it. It can be a film like Your Name that expresses beautifully the lingering feeling of someone you love but can't quite reach. Or a trilogy like Star Wars that uses science fiction to correlate to the societies that used to exist in our world. Or even a sports anime like Haikyuu that uses the sport of volleyball as a way to develop characters through the journey they take. And thus, fiction turns into something that is real, thanks to the way a show or a film uses its imaginary world as a metaphor to our own, and the characters as a link to our experiences, whether it be the strengths that we possess or the insecurities we face. And no better example is this found than in the modern masterpiece that is Attack on Titan. After 7 long years of hearing about how unbelievable this show was, I decided to plunge myself into this work of fiction, to understand what all the fuss was about, to figure out why this show was so beloved, and thus began my journey through Hajime Isayama's creation. What stood out to me from the get-go was how mysterious this all was. To see a young boy like Eren sleep in such a peaceful manner, but at the same time have these weird and seemingly horrifying dreams. And even though this is all a foreshadowing for what comes later, what it shows without almost any dialogue is how unhappy he is at what seems to be such a marvelous world to be in. The flowers that surround him, the beauty of the blue sky and warm sun, and waking up to someone who is always there for him. But this isn't what he wants. He doesn't want to settle for the life that he has. He is not content with the fact that he and everyone else around him has lived a serene life for more than 100 years. And most of all, he doesn't want to be afraid of the biggest threat to humanity, the existence of titans that can wipe out humans instantly. He doesn't want to simply feel safe, to feel like mere cattle because of these 50-meter walls. He wants to break through them and see what lies beyond. He wants more. The premise of the show is not one that is uncommon. The idea of feeling like there's more than what meets the eye. The beauty that you see might not be so beautiful if you knew more, which is the fundamental concept of belief versus knowledge. One that was famously introduced to mankind by the Greek philosopher Plato, presented in his allegory of the cave. The summary of this is quite simple. It's about a man who frees himself and explores the outside world. And due to his newfound wisdom, he goes back to the cave to free the other prisoners. However, the other men decline to do so, believing that leaving the cave will do more harm than good. The allegory confronts the notion that we as human beings should always strive for more, to gain as much knowledge as we can, which can be considered as the ultimate form of good. But in order for this to happen, this form of good needs to be shared with everyone else. But the allegory also shows that there will always be more people who are simply content in the world they live in, who choose to be chained because what they see and know is enough for them to be happy, and don't want to be challenged on those concepts. This allegory of the cave, being such an interesting idea, has been depicted in fiction in so many ways that uses this allegory to make us aware that maybe there is more to the world we live in than we initially thought. Attack on Titan does the same. But what the anime and manga does is push that notion even further. It's not about reaching a point where our main characters can free themselves from the walls that enclosed them for so long. Because if it was, it could have ended in season 3, with them facing the ocean. But what this story really wants to show is what lies ahead. Yes, we now know who the real threat to humanity is. It's not the Titans, but humanity itself. Humans that also live beyond the walls, also known as the Marleyans, who in turn are afraid of the people who live inside the walls. People like Eren and everyone who surrounds him, also known as the Eldians. And it's with the Eldians that lies the possibility of transforming into Titans. That's right, what Eren and everyone else was scared of in the beginning of the show is the exact same reason why the armored and colossal Titan attacked their walls in the first place. Because both the Eldians and Marleyans perceive each other to be a threat to their own existence, as it happened throughout their long history. So when they finally reach the ocean, it doesn't lead to freedom, but rather to the connection that still exists between Eldians and Marleyans. And it's this realization that causes Eren to not fully appreciate the extraordinary sight that lays in front of him, as opposed to the clear joy and happiness that both Mikasa and Armin are feeling in that moment. This awareness is what will push the story further, slowly tearing down the wall between the perception of good and bad, slowly making us realize what Eren is going through, making us question everything, making us unsure of our feelings, making us think in a way we were not expecting, because our main character is essentially the personification of this freed prisoner, even more so than his friends. And to fully understand this, we start to follow other characters, as is presented in the beginning of the final season. Follow who the Marleyans really are, making us connect with them, seeing them live their lives to take down the Eldians, and use the remaining Eldians that exist in Marley to control the power of the Titans, as they intend to do with Gabi, someone who wants to kill the Eldians at all costs, someone who also wants true freedom, and someone who will challenge us in ways we couldn't foresee. Because when our protagonists attack Marley, Gabi does something that will hurt us so much, something that will shake us to our very core, something that we will never forget, and that is killing off one of our favorite characters, putting a dent to what our characters plan to do, shown in the most brutal way possible. The color red comes to mind, encompassing our screen more and more, seeing everyone in sheer shock and pain, wanting to revert this moment so much, until Connie utters those devastating words: Sasha is dead. It's a moment that makes us feel everything, not just due to what happened, but also thanks to the wonderful execution that Mappa did to portray this scene so perfectly. The use of extreme close-ups, closing in on their eyes, cutting a portion of their face, accentuating the feeling of claustrophobia we get from this moment, as if we have just lost our breaths, as if we are fighting for our dear lives. It's such a brilliantly directed scene. However, what makes it even more fascinating is when we start to understand the complexities of it all. We care about Sasha dying, and we certainly don't care about Gabi. In fact, we hate her for what she did, because we only think about ourselves. We think about what we do to protect our own. We have seen Sasha do so much throughout these past seasons, see her interact with everyone, see her devour so much food with passion, see her save people in a nearby town, and see her relationship bond so much with Connie and Jean. But now, this character has been taken away from us due to this one person who happened to shoot her. We should hate her, and many of us do. But in reality, we are exactly like Gabi. She has seen so many of her friends die before her very eyes. She has suffered so much throughout her entire life. She has also lost many Sashas herself. But because we haven't spent the same amount of time with them, we choose not to care about the hundreds of people who died during the attack on Marley. We choose to care about the characters we have followed for more than 3 seasons. And I want to emphasize on the word choose. We choose not to care about these new characters. We won't care about them. We won't. Or will we? Are we going to choose to not understand what all of this really means? Are we going to be stubborn enough to not realize who Gabi really is? Because the truth is, she wants to rid the world of Eldians, similar to how Eren wanted to rid the world of Titans. Their anger and convictions come from the same place, because she has also lived her whole life behind walls. Not physical ones, but ones that have made her think in a specific way. And her actions seem justifiable to her, considering everything she went through. She's essentially Eren, the same character who we grew to love so much since the very beginning. But Sasha dying could also be his fault, since he was the one who unexpectedly ordered for the attack to happen in the first place, against everyone's will. So whose fault is it? Is it Gabi's or Eren's? And that's what's so great about this show. It makes us battle with ourselves, our emotions and logic in constant turmoil, trying to figure out whether we are right or wrong in the way that we think, making us doubt ourselves so much. Exemplified in Gabi herself when she's confronted with her ideals later in the season. When a certain Eldian girl talks to her about what her life used to be, how her mother was devoured by a titan, how her mother was never a devil to anyone, because to this girl, to Kaze, her mother was never responsible for the actions of those who came before. She was merely someone who lived a peaceful life. And the only reason why Kaze is still alive is because she was saved by a woman who chose to do so. And that woman was Sasha. Gabi inadvertently was being confronted with the notion of what it means to save other people, all thanks to the very same person that she killed. It was at this moment where I stopped for a second to take in all the ambiguity this anime has. Because as amazing as all of the action scenes are, as fascinating as the long shots that Wit Studio provided to us in the earlier seasons, as masterful as the use of direction that Studio Mappa is offering us during its final season, it's moments like these that make me really appreciate a story like this, showing us the impact that people can have on the world after they are gone. Whether it was due to the actions of those who lived thousands of years ago, or the actions of those who lived until very recently, and could shape each person in completely different ways. Who do we listen to? Who do we believe? And what does more insight bring us? But more importantly, what is right and wrong? And to explain this further, we need to talk about Eren's conversation with Mikasa and Armin. Eren has apparently teamed up with the enemy and his brother Zeke, the person who was responsible for Eren's suffering so long ago. But it didn't matter, because both Eren and Zeke had reached a similar conclusion. They were planning to do something that no one was expecting. And so, when Eren decides to meet up with Mikasa and Armin, we are faced with an exceptionally intriguing, but also extremely hurtful conversation between our three protagonists. These three have gone through everything together, ever since their home district was attacked by the Titans, wanting to one day see the ocean together, wanting to be free of the pain that they endured as one, wanting nothing more than to survive together. But here, we witness what appears to be a completely different Eren, going to the lengths of saying the most devastating things to Mikasa, mentioning how he always hated how much of a sheep she was, always wanting to save him at all costs, but without any logic or reason behind it, and even explains that this happened because of her Ackerman bloodline, the person who is alive thanks to Eren, the person who was always there for him since the very beginning, has now had her world completely shattered, due to the fact that Eren has always seen her as a slave, as mere cattle, and our protagonist has no respect for people who never question themselves about anything, even if it is someone who has been beside him all his life. Now, we can question whether he's being truthful or not. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. But everything that he said falls in line with what we've always known about him. He is someone who wants to be free, just as he expressed in the beginning of the show, just as Plato's allegory of the cave mentions. Our main character sees himself as the only one who can truly save the world, to bring down the walls that have been placed around him, around everyone, and find the freedom he so desperately wants. I'll be truly honest here. I hate the fact that he hurt his friends so much. I truly do. I love the companionship that these three endured every step of the way. It's even thanks to Eren and Mikasa that Armin is still alive in one of the most tense moments of the entire show. But I'm also incredibly intrigued by what our protagonist has become, because there is logic to what he is thinking, and that is what scares me. The fact that this character has supposedly gone against everyone we came to love. The fact that he should have been a good guy. The fact that he should now be a bad guy. But with the way the final season part 1 ended, I don't know what to think and feel anymore. Because the reality is, there are no good guys or bad guys. There are simply these characters who are doing what they think is right. And what truly terrifies me is how much I connected with Eren during this moment. Because this conversation was reminiscent to the one I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I don't like misconceptions. I don't like how people have certain opinions without more substance to them. And I have difficulty in accepting someone being happy without wanting to know more. I realize that this sentiment, in many ways, is wrong. How people want to live their lives is totally up to them, and that is totally fine. In fact, it's more than fine. It's essential. People want to be happy and should do whatever it takes to do so. But at the same time, I have suffered quite a lot with the idea of society forcing us to be a certain way, to follow orders because we are told to do so. To which I ask, why? Why should I do what other people want me to do? Why should I force myself to be someone who I do not want to be? And why should people think less of me because I'm not like everyone else? This might not seem like such an important thing, but these are things that many people go through in their lives. And I remember last year being faced with this reality. I had a normal life, doing what I should do at my age, doing what the world wanted me to do, and I was awfully unhappy, and thus made a decision, one that I kept thinking about for days, weeks, months even. But at the end of the day, it was a decision I had to make, because to a certain degree, I relate with Eren, and I want to emphasize on the words to a certain degree. I don't think there's any need for me to explain how we are not so alike. Well, what I can relate is that I want to know more. I want to see what is out there. But most of all, what truly defines me is that I want to impact everyone around me in the most positive way possible. I love sharing my thoughts and emotions to reach a deep connection with someone else, and I want other people to do the same to me. So when I had that conversation mentioned at the beginning of this video, all I wanted to do was to show that person what anime and even cinema can do to someone. How it challenges us, how it makes us cry, how it makes us think. But most of all, how it changes us for the better. It doesn't matter if it's a world that doesn't exist. It doesn't matter if it's a drawing. What matters is what is shown, what it wants to convey, and how we can relate to what we see on the screen. Not solely to ourselves, but also to the society we live in. And making us ask the most important question that there is. Why? Which is exactly what Attack on Titan has been doing since the very beginning. Not trying to teach us a message, not trying to teach us what is good or bad, but rather showcasing how so many characters can be so human. And all we see is a world that can in so many ways correlate to our own. As frightening as that might be. Because the truth is, fiction can be real, cinema can be real, anime can be real. And I can't wait to see what this modern masterpiece does next. Oh shit!